Hello everybody and welcome to Their Story, a show that goes back in time to take a look at the different key historical figures and events that shaped their time. In today's episode, we'll be taking a look at the Mongols. More specifically, we'll be taking a look at the Mongols under the control of Genghis Khan. The focus of today's video will be how Genghis Khan was such a successful conqueror, from the ways that he kept his soldiers disciplined on the battlefield to the different strategies and tactics he used on the battlefield, as well as the Mongols' expert use of the horse.
Now, who was Temujin before he became Genghis Khan? Many believe that he was just a blood-raged barbarian who slaughtered millions to get what he wanted. Only after inspecting him carefully do you get to see the man and respected leader he really was. Destined to be a great warrior at birth, Genghis made a name for himself after his father's death as he became an heir to be Khan. Genghis believed that it was his destiny to conquer the world and to have it under his control. Although he was able to conquer most of Asia and a chunk of Europe, at his deathbed he believed that his destiny was not fulfilled, as he was not able to make his goal of conquering the world come into fruition. Although he was not able to seize the world in its entirety, we will take a look at how he was able to capture as much as he did before his passing.
Okay, so the first topic we'll be taking a look at is how Genghis Khan was able to keep his troops disciplined. Now we have to remember that Genghis Khan was building an army from the ground, a professional army. To emphasize his authority, he had a group of elite officers, so to say, around him known as the Kashik.
The Kashik were the imperial guard for Genghis Khan and for Mongol royalty. Their primary purpose was to act as bodyguards for the emperors and other important nobles. It was a high honor to work under Genghis Khan, so young troops who had the potential to be appointed to this position would work endlessly as soldiers and officers. Genghis Khan was also a man of his people, so, as an incentive for obedience, Temujin would promise civilians and soldiers wealth from future war spoils. As well as this, he kept his newer troops loyal to him and disciplined. When he defeated rival tribes, he did not force away their soldiers and abandon their civilians. Instead, he took the conquered tribe under his protection and integrated its members into his own tribe. His mother would even adopt orphans from the conquered tribe, bringing them into his family. These political innovations inspired great loyalty among the conquered people, making Temujin's army larger and stronger with each victory.
Genghis Khan was trying to amass the largest army he could. That's why at a very early age he even recruited children to join his army. It was made compulsory that both children and men learned horsery and archery, as archery was their number one choice of weapon.
So, why did he begin to build this army? Temujin and Jamuka would begin their falling out after a Mongol holy man came to them and claimed that Temujin would be the one to rule. Not too fond of this, Jamuka took his men and split from the tribe that he and Temujin had built together. Years later, Jamuka's men would ambush Temujin's tribe, capturing his generals and torturing them to death in gruesome ways. This event would cause Temujin to begin building his army, a fighting machine that would fight together as a single unit, as opposed to the Mongol hordes that had been the traditional way.
Genghis Khan had his troops trained on the horse. The reason being is, since the Mongols' choice of weapon was the bow and arrow, he had his troops trained to release the arrow as soon as the horse's hooves left the floor for maximum accuracy.
Around 60% of Genghis Khan's army was made up of light cavalry horse archers, while the rest of his army were more heavily armed horsemen. The heavily armed horsemen were usually equipped with a lance. Either way, Genghis would deploy his entire army on horseback. Their horses played an incredibly crucial role in the army, so much so that the horses were armored just as much as the troops were themselves. These horses were bred to have incredible stamina, which would give an endurance advantage to the Mongols, allowing them to outlast their opponents. All horses were equipped with stirrups, which would allow the Mongols to maneuver their bodies and would help them time their shots.
Now, speaking of horses, this leads us into our next topic, which is how the Mongols were able to utilize these horses during warfare. One thing that the Mongols like to do is what is known as a feign retreat. This would happen when the Mongols would taunt their enemies into pursuing them. During the pursuit, the Mongols would turn around on their horses so that they were facing backwards. Since the Mongols were so well trained on archery, the Mongols would fire a volley of arrows towards their enemy as they were chasing them. There was a different variant to this strategy. The Mongols were quite infamous for this one. What they would do is, during the pursuit, the Mongols would lure their enemies into a specific location. This location had hidden Mongols behind trees, bushes, rocks. When in position, the Mongols would fire at their enemies from all different directions.
To perform these retreats and ambushes, the Mongols would have to carefully scout out the land in advance of their invasion. They would do this well in advance to make certain that they would have the highest rate of success. But, as these strategies became better known to the Mongol enemies, the Mongols would sometimes have to continue their ruse for days upon weeks to convince their enemies that they were truly retreating. This strategy was one of the most difficult to perform on the battlefield, which only goes to display how truly disciplined the Mongols were under Genghis Khan. He would use these strategies regularly during his conquests of Asia, and he even used the feigned retreat during his battles with his blood brother Jarmuka.
So, not all of the things Genghis Khan implemented into his strategies had to do with actual warfare. Genghis Khan was a big fan of mental warfare. There was many different accounts of things he did to his enemies psychologically rather than physically. One example of a mental strategy he used is during his face downs with his enemies. He'd have his horses kick up a lot of sand and debris into the air, cloaking his back line, making his enemy think that there is more troops than he really has. As well as this, Genghis Khan would give the illusion of having more troops by placing dummies on top of horses. Now, it's pretty evident that this would be a recurring theme for Genghis Khan. During his feud with his blood brother Jarmuka, Genghis Khan made each of his men light multiple campfires. This, once again, gave the impression that he had a bigger army. When Jarmuka's scouts reported back to him, they said that he had more campfires lit than stars in the night sky.
Genghis Khan's success as a conqueror is undoubtable. Since he was a man of his people, his troops would remain loyal to him throughout his expeditions. Having personal authority over his men, his troops would remain disciplined, which would give him and his military certain advantages. Another nod that contributes to his success comes from the Mongols' use of the horse. Since every soldier was trained on horseback, this opened up new military tactics and strategies that the ancient world had not yet seen. The strategies that the Mongols used with their horses, mixed with the psychological war tactics that Genghis Khan grew fond of, would be some of the leading reasons why he is referred to today as one of the most effective conquerors.
Well guys, that's all the time we have for today. If you have any suggestions on topics we should cover, make sure to leave them down in the comments below. Like the video, and as for the Mongols, well, that was their story.